Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is, and welcome back. I hope your week has been outstanding thus far. It's only going to get better from here. Can't you feel it? We got a bunch of business to attend to today. We're talking about Fauci. Remember him? Well, he has tried to escape all culpability for everything he's ever done, getting a pardon going all the way back to 2014, and now he's getting another criminal referral. A re-referral. This time, though, it's going to the Trump DOJ. Remember last time it was going over to Joe Biden's DOJ, and they didn't do anything that was against their side. And so Rand Paul is now saying, hey, Pam, why don't you take a look at Fauci? And we'll go through some of the background on this because Rand Paul made a post about it. He sent a brand new letter. This is coming from the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee over in the Senate. So some juicy stuff there. We'll read through the letter and we'll see what's going on because we want accountability on Fauci and all of the COVID maniacs. And so Rand Paul was also out talking about this. There's some good stuff here. I pulled up the Fauci pardon once again. We got Jim Jordan and Ron Johnson talking about this today. In fact, Ron Johnson was out. There was a subcommittee hearing on investigations of voices of the vaccine injured. And there's a lot of those voices out there, and Johnson was talking about it. So we'll come back to that. Then we have to celebrate a little bit because we are seeing that our thesis seemingly is coming true as it relates to Kilmar. We've long said, where's the file that says that the judge says that he cannot go back to El Salvador? Show me the order. Show me anything written by the judge that says that, because the only thing we've seen says he can't go back to Guatemala. And what happened is last week during a hearing, there was a courtroom bombshell that went off. And his defense attorneys admitted, or these are his ACLU gangbang lawyers, admitted to the judge. She said, you do have the A file, right? So like you have all of the records related to his deportation and his withholding of removal and all that. And they said, no, not really. We don't. We have something else. It's called the EARM file. And we'll go through what that is and what that means and explain why his defense attorneys, might have been pulling the rug on this judge, and we'll see if she is going to catch them or not. But we have not seen any evidence, and I have emailed the attorneys for Kilmar, being very nice. I said, hey, look, I'll admit I'm wrong. I'll come here on the show. I said, and I'll say I'm wrong. But can you give me anything in the public record that says El Salvador? Crickets. Now, why would they respond to me, obviously? But still, it is interesting that it just doesn't exist. So we've got that. We've got some of DOJ filings. They're responding to him. This is in the criminal case. So we'll come back to this one in Nashville. Remember, this is Kilmar being prosecuted, and the government is saying he should not have bond. He should not be released. You should not let him out of custody because the guy is an MS-13 gangbanger, and we're not happy about it. Documents been filed under seal, and Tom Homan is out. And then we'll wrap it up with some Chuck Grassley news, because Chuck Grassley, he's the great senator from Iowa. He said that the Secret Service knew of a threat to Trump's life in Butler 10 days before Butler happened, and they didn't do anything to secure the premises. And they released an actual real report. I mean, this is a significant report that Grassley published from the GAO for official use, law enforcement sensitive, now authorized for public release by Chairman Chuck Grassley. And there's a bunch of good stuff in here. We'll just hit the highlights on this thing because it's 98 pages and they've assembled just a lot. I mean, this is the best report we've seen on Butler thus far, most comprehensive. And of course, it's got recommendations and a bunch of other things coming from Chuck Grassley, who does good work over there. Good team. And we appreciate Chuck's work. All right, so we got that. Then we'll talk about some other things. We got Mike Johnson, who's out. And it's going to be a beautiful stream, my friends. We're very glad that you're here. Happy Tri-Tip, Tomahawk, Tater Tot Tuesday. And I hope that you become a member if you haven't already done so. We had a great members-only stream this morning talking about all sorts of other things that we can't get to here. We have an amazing members-only community. We really deliver for our members as best we can. And we stream multiple times a week in the mornings, sometimes 6 times a week and we have a great time. So come join us, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, or click the join button on YouTube. Great way to support our work as well. Thank you for doing that if you're interested. Now, we got business to attend to today, starting with this criminal. Fauci hasn't escaped yet. Rand Paul, a senator, said today, I'm going to reissue my criminal referral for Anthony Fauci and demanding that he be prosecuted for his COVID crimes. And that referral had already been sent, but last time it got sent out, it was going to Joe Biden's DOJ with Merrick Garland, and Fauci was in on it with them. In fact, remember, Joe Biden gave Fauci a pardon for these things, and so we're asking the question, what is Rand Paul's criminal referral ultimately going to do, and how is it going to combat this pardon? Now, we'll come back to this pardon because we want to get very clear on this. We'll see if Rand Paul addresses it. What actually is Fauci pardoned for? And can this criminal referral overcome the pardon in some way by charging him with other crimes like lying to Congress? We'll see if that's in there. So Rand Paul posted this, and it came out not just from Rand, it's also from the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Senate website, saying Senator Rand Paul refers Fauci to the DOJ. And hopefully they do something about it, Pam. Be a nice time to totally redeem yourself. I was trying to think of the Dumb and Dumber quote. That could happen. But Rand Paul said, look, here's the backstory. In July 2023, I referred Dr. Anthony Fauci to the DOJ for lying under oath to Congress. His own emails directly contradicted his sworn testimony. And it's okay. You can lie to Congress as long as you're a Democrat operative. Now, the New York Times reports that Fauci was quietly pardoned with an auto pen, as we saw, operated by Biden's staff. If the president, says Rand, didn't authorize the pardon personally, then the department has a duty to investigate and prosecute as it would any ordinary citizen. And if Fauci wants to make his argument that the pardon is valid, then he can make that case in court. Prosecute him first, and then he can come out and say, you can't prosecute me. They'll file it in some district. The judge will say, well, I don't know. If they file it in D.C., he's charged in D.C., a judge will say, get out of here. He's got a pardon. It's immune. Get out of here. Motion to dismiss granted. You file it in a real jurisdiction with real judges, then they might actually say, yeah, if you're going to come in here and allege a defense, like a grand jury sat down and indicted you, Dr. Fauci, and they've decided that there is probable cause for criminal charges against you. And if you want to rebut that, then you can come in and introduce some evidence of your pardon. And the document alone might be sufficient, but then you can open up the whole floodgates and say, well, we need to have an evidentiary hearing about how this was actually drafted. Who approved it? Does it carry the weight of the presidency, or is it one of Hunter's acolytes signing off on the document? So here we see Rand digging into it, says the department has a duty. Now, Fauci has been sainted by the extremist left, who happen to love death in general, so they're fine with it. But it doesn't erase his lying before Congress. And it's weird that the left loves him. I mean, they were the ones taking the 55 jabs in the neck and suffering a lot of the consequences as well. But they still, it's, I think, sunk cost fallacy. They're already in love with Fauci, so they can't reorient themselves. He says, I am officially re-referring Dr. Fauci to the DOJ. We're happy to see it. Here is what the publication on the Senate site said. Dr. Rand Paul, an actual doctor, today renewed his referral for Dr. Anthony Fauci to the DOJ for potential criminal prosecution, following new revelations that Fauci was granted a pardon using an auto pen operated by White House staff without any clear evidence of President Biden giving direct authorization for it. We got questions. Rand said, in July 2023, I referred this over to the DOJ for lying. Biden didn't care. Fauci's own emails contradicted his testimony, and he was quietly pardoned, and he's been anointed and sainted by the left. A recent report by the New York Times, which we covered yesterday, revealed several last-minute pardons, including one for Dr. Fauci. They were executed not by Joe himself, but by the staff using an auto pen. And we don't know that Joe Biden actually knew about those things, right? He talked about broad categories of approvals. Lots of people were getting clemency and pardons, and he couldn't, keep track of all of them because of his brain. According to the report, Biden did not directly authorize all the clemency grants that were issued in his name, and some documents were altered by staff before being signed without any documented presidential review or approval. No chain of custody. Senator Paul's original criminal referral says that Fauci lied in testimony before the Senate in February 2021, where he denied the National Institutes of Health funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan. Subsequent disclosures, including Fauci's own emails, called that testimony into question. And so Dr. Paul is referring this over to the DOJ and urging Pam Bondi to have immediate review of both the original allegations and the legal validity of the pardon itself. We'll see if Pam Bondi does it or not. But here is what Rand sent. All right, Pam, here's an opportunity to totally redeem yourself. Maybe. A little bit. Now, I write to renew, but Fauci's a big one. Okay, Fauci gets prosecuted, or you turn around and you see Brennan get prosecuted, or Comey get prosecuted, or all three of them. Is that worth an Epstein? Come on, you have to ask yourself on that. Would you take one Epstein or a Brennan, a Comey, and a Fauci? It's a tough trade on that one. I don't know. You want them all. I know, but sometimes we can't have everything we want. I write to renew my previous requests, Pam. Back to your same office. For the DOJ to open an investigation into former director of the NIAID, who wrecked the planet, Anthony Fauci, and their testimony before the United States Senate Committee, which was illegal, maybe. This most recent request stems from new allegations that call into question the validity of Dr. Fauci's purported so-called pardon. In response to my questioning at the May 11th hearing, Dr. Fauci testified that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in Wuhan. In a subsequent hearing, I warned Fauci of the criminal implications of lying to Congress. I said, don't you do it. And I offered him an opportunity to recant. You want to revise that statement? Because I got some emails here, doctor. In response, Dr. Fauci stated that he had never lied before the Congress, and he did not retract that statement. All right. Boom. Cited right there. Explaining, on July 13, 2023, almost 2 years to the day, the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic released an email sent by Fauci on February 1, 2020, when all of this was popping off, remember? Regarding a conference call concerning the origins of COVID. And on that call was Fauci and Francis Collins and several scientific so-called researchers. In the email, Dr. Fauci acknowledges concerns that COVID may have been genetically engineered due to the fact that the gain-of-function research was in fact occurring in Wuhan prior to the pandemic. Oh, wow. Fauci wrote the quote following. He says, scientists in Wuhan University are known to have been working on gain-of-function experiments that determine that molecular mechanisms associated with bat viruses adapting to human infection and that the outbreak originated in Wuhan. Wow. And then he went to Congress and lied through his teeth about it because he was a part of it. He was funding all of it. With EcoHealth Alliance and Peter Daszak and all those people. Lied through his teeth to Congress and to the American people. And we knew that there was something much broader than another bird flu or whatever. We have that every year. It's like bird flu, swine flu, whatever flu. Comes through, okay, worms this season. Okay, it's bovines, whatever. Constantly. This was like a military operation. You recall, Trump came out, man. He went into the White House looking, orange and good. He came out looking ghost white, like he had seen a ghost. And it was like, okay, national emergency came shortly thereafter. In March, if you remember, we started the show. Like, this is ridiculous. How dare they even think about locking us down? In a paper entitled Discovery of Rich Gene Pool of Bat SARS-Related COVID Viruses, Dr. Zhengli Shi, Bat Lady, who is one of the people in Wuhan, describes the research that was conducted in Wuhan under the NIAID grant entitled That Number. Now, in that research, the spike genes from two uncharacterized bat SARS-related coronaviruses were combined with the genomic backbone of another SARS-related coronavirus to create a novel chimeric SARS-related virus that showed cytopathic effects in primate epithelial cells and replication in human epithelial cells. Now, these experiments combine genetic information from different viruses to create new artificial viruses able to infect human cells. Thanks, guys. Now, this research conducted at Wuhan and funded by Fauci, who then lied about it, fits the definition of gain of function research. Saying in 2023, the Government Accountability Office determined that Wuhan and NIH were working together for funding. The report noted that the National Institutes of Health funded the project understanding the risk of bat coronavirus emergence and included genetic experiments to combine naturally occurring bat coronaviruses with SARS and MERS viruses, resulting in hybridized coronavirus strains, says Dr. Rand Paul. And we also found that they funded the collaboration on viral detection elsewhere. And so the law says you can't do this. Fauci knew this. Section 1001 says whoever makes any materially false, fictitious, or fraudulent statement in front of Congress can be subject to imprisonment of up to 5 years. He lied. It's clear as day. On January 19th, Dr. Fauci was issued a full and unconditional pardon for any offenses, Joe Biden said, that he may have committed or taken part in since 2014. And we saw that. It's right here. For any offenses in which Fauci may have committed or taken part from January 1, 2014, probably when a lot of this garbage started, through the date of this pardon arising from or in any manner related to his service as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, as a member of the White House Task Force, or as chief medical advisor to the president, all signed via auto pen by some person in Joe Biden's office. Clearly not him. So Rand says, Dr. Fauci was included among a group of individuals granted unprecedented preemptive pardons on Joe Biden's final day in office. However, new information has revealed that these pardons were executed via auto pen with no documented confirmation that Biden personally reviewed or approved each individual grant of clemency at all. Now, according to reports, White House staff also authorized the use of the auto pen for clemency, and that raises serious constitutional and legal concerns about whether Fauci's pardon is legitimate. And so for these reasons, Dr. Rand Paul says, I renew my request that the DOJ investigate whether Fauci and his statements to Congress violated the law. Thank you for your prompt attention to this matter. And hopefully Pam Bondi processed this letter and it's not just sitting on her desk like those other files once were. So that went over to her. We'll see what she does about it. Rand Paul talked about this today. He was on with the cable shows and he says, multiple people testified about what happened. Fauci's a liar. We know it, and that he should be in jail.
The New York Times is reporting that Joe Biden's former chief of staff, Jeff Zients, was the one who approved the auto pen's use for the 11th hour pardons. That's the night before Joe Biden left office. They started pardoning all these people. The pardons included a preemptive pardon for General Mark Milley, a preemptive pardon for Dr. Anthony Fauci. Now, you are reissuing your criminal referral of Anthony Fauci to the Department of Justice. Your reaction to now Jeff Zients being the one who pardoned Fauci, okay? It wasn't Joe Biden. He was pardoned by Jeff Zients.
Yeah, my first question is, who knew? Who knew that there was a President Jeff Zients and he was in charge of pardons? I mean, it is really shocking and, in all likelihood, criminal. Now, will they try to backpedal and say Biden was somehow involved? I think that's what they'll try. But an auto pen pardon, preemptive pardon, there's a lot to go on here. The only way we could actually get this into court is hopefully the DOJ would do their job, indict Anthony Fauci for the felony of lying to Congress, and then take it to court. And then they can plead that he has been pardoned, but then the court could judge whether the pardon is valid.
Exactly.
So the only way we get this into court is someone who's been pardoned will have to be indicted. And I would promote that Anthony Fauci is a prime specimen for this.
So I believe he said that he didn't do gain-of-function research. What specifically did Fauci lie about in front of Congress?
About gain-of-function research. And in fact, we have him contradicted by several other members of the NIH who testified and said, of course, it was gain-of-function research. We also have the own words of the people receiving the money. The people receiving the money, the people who were the conduit with Wuhan, China, was a group called Eco Health Alliance. We have notes from them going
Daszak.
back to the NIH saying, thank you for restarting our gain of function money. They actually acknowledged that it was gain of function. So, no, I don't think he has a leg to stand on here. And there are many observers of this who believe that he did lie and that he continued to change and modify the definition. In fact, one time when he testified, the NIH had changed the definition right before his testimony. In the hours before he came to testify, they had changed it on the website to a new definition.
Wild.
So he was playing
up.
games with words, but he wasn't being honest. They were taking viruses, they were combining live viruses, and they were making them more dangerous. They're growing them in human cells, which allows them to adapt and be modified to be spread more quickly among humans. And that's in all likelihood what happened with COVID. It was an animal virus grown in human cells and adapted over time to become contagious. And that's why when it took off, it wasn't like the bird flu. Right now, the bird flu can infect humans, but it doesn't go human to human. That's the way most animal viruses are to begin with, not very contagious from human to human. But this virus, COVID-19, when it first affected humans, it went through the human population, went around the world, and that indicates that this was not just your typical animal virus, but in all likelihood an animal virus that had been pre-adapted in the laboratory.
I mean, the rules that Fauci...
Yeah, and hopefully Rand Paul is persuasive enough that Pam Bondi takes a look.
Probably not criminally liable for saying stuff that made no scientific sense. Like the whole wearing cloth masks over you. In all likelihood, people in America died because they took his advice, wore a cloth mask. They were 80 years old and they took care of their spouse and they got COVID anyway because cloth masks don't work. So it was bad advice. It was terrible advice, and we never should have hired him to be a public health expert. He also severely damaged a lot of our workers, the meatpacking workers, a lot of people who worked really hard in a messy industry. Once they had COVID, he should have told them, in all likelihood, you're safe. Instead, he told them, no, now you still have to triple mask up. You have to be afraid. Your family has to be afraid. He really didn't do any of the things that a public health official should have done.
Yeah, and we had the worst health outcomes, I think, in the world. And that's debatable, but it shouldn't even be close. We should have the best in the world. Not debating about who had the worst health outcomes and why America, it was supposed to have like this military superstructure, CDC, NIH, NIAID, all this funding on emergency alert in the event that we need them to come in and solve a problem like this in a global pandemic environment. They couldn't even get fake masks that don't even work printed out quickly enough. People were scrambling around for hand sanitizer, alcohol, and water that they couldn't put in plastic tubs. That was our government. That's how inefficient and ineffective they were. Then they lied to us through their teeth constantly. You're killing everybody. Lock your businesses down. Don't go out. And when BLM decided it was time for them to have their little moment, suddenly everything gets reversed, right? The whole thing was a political attack. And guys like Fauci got rich off of it. They had psycho nurses doing Fauci dances and stuff while people are dropping dead thanks to Fauci's funding. And now Rand Paul is digging into it. We're looking forward to it. So here was more. Jim Jordan was commenting on really Joe Biden and how demented the entire administration was and questioning whether
as a template
this pardon was actually valid or not. Here was Jim Jordan.
The left has a template.
All right, it's got music in the background. Thanks, Jim. Now, here is more from Senator Ron Johnson. We have this from the Senate today. They had Voices of the Vaccine Injured happening today. Here's just a little snippet of this and a reminder of why guys like Fauci need to be investigated and prosecuted if possible. And a sane country would do it. He can go defend himself with his pardon. But the pardon was to cover up many, many deaths from his criminal negligence and his lies to Congress to cover up his complicity in this global disaster. Here's Johnson.
In our first hearing of this Congress titled The Corruption of Science and Federal Health Agencies, How Health Officials Downplayed and Hid Myocarditis and Other Adverse Events Associated with the COVID-19 Injections, I asked Dr. Joel Walscock, an orthopedic surgeon injured by the COVID injections, to describe how those suffering from COVID injection injuries felt. His one-word answer, abandoned.
Yeah, it's a pretty good word. I would have said maybe betrayed. but abandon is also pretty good.
The purpose of today's hearing, titled Voices of the Vaccine Injured, is very simple: to give a platform to those individuals and families who have been abandoned, their injuries and suffering dismissed and forgotten. In addition, we will also hear from witnesses whose lives were devastated by fatal cases of severe influenza. We all fear death and disease. The appeal of a simple shot that can prevent both is obvious and powerful. Unfortunately, this strong appeal has overridden critical thinking and prevented rigorous cost-benefit analysis from being done. The faith in vaccines and vaccination policy is protected with religious-like zeal, and those questioning them are viewed as apostates, dangerous apostates, more than deserving of the scorn, vilification, and retribution heaped upon them. An open-minded review of the history of vaccination dating back to Edward Jenner, the creator of the smallpox vaccine, is both interesting and enlightening. Reading books like Dissolving Illusions, Turtles All the Way Down, and Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, and Reality.
Write these down.
Or a May 21st, 2025 Substack by Toby Rogers titled Mapping the Entire Field of Autism Causation Studies.
What's up, Toby Rogers?
Certainly opened my eyes, and I sincerely hope will open millions more. And while I haven't mentioned it, I'd like to enter Toby Rogers' article, Substack, into the record without objection.
Shout out to Toby Rogers and his Substack. So that took place today, right? And this is a real thing that's happening. Emily, we've got Eric, we've got Brian Hooker, we've got Robert Sullivan, MD, Polly's there, Cerise is in the house. What's up? Crystal was there testifying. Back to Emily. What a nice lady. And the Democrats, is this going to be Blumenthal attacking her? You're not really injured, are you?
That's the first line to determine if there are red flags for injuries after vaccination. And that is a very, very flawed system. I had no idea at the time. But I have learned that, as I said in my talk.
All right, hopefully she gets better soon. So a lot of that was happening today. Lots of doctors talking about it. So Senate keeping pressure on it. Rand Paul sending a criminal referral directly to Pam Bondi. Come on, Pam. We got a gimme here. Just pick this one up and run with it. Fauci can come in. He can declare his pardon, and the courts can meddle and sort through it all. But Fauci must face consequences for his lies because no one is above the law. All right, we got that. Now, let's turn our attention over to this one because this is just delicious. A courtroom bombshell in the Kilmar case. Turns out his defense attorneys don't actually have key evidence that the judge was asking about, and they had to admit that in court. The article came out from Tom Papper. This is the case of Kilmar wife beater Abrego Garcia, who, of course, was deported to El Salvador. A lot of them flipped out and said, you can't send him to El Salvador. He had a withholding of removal order that said he can't go to El Salvador, but nobody has ever shown us that document. The only thing they've shown us is a court order, a written order that in the concluding paragraph talks about not sending him to Guatemala. And then the order is based on that conclusion. And so he was actually prohibited from going to Guatemala. So the question is, where is the original file that shows the judge said somewhere, remember they said, well, he addended it. He made an addendum and he changed Guatemala to El Salvador. All these people saying, what? Well, where's the addendum on that? Why didn't he update the official order? And how hard is it for Kilmar to have his defense attorneys or them to post out clearly it says El Salvador? Because it doesn't exist has always been our thesis on it, and the DOJ essentially missed it, and they don't have the file. This came out from Tom Pappert. Abrego Garcia's attorneys admit that they lack the file that would be used to claim that their client was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. And we've covered this before, but just to recap this, in our research files, in the Kilmar Abrego case, over at watcherlodge.com, we've got a bunch of records over there, which I'm going to be updating very soon once we wrap up this other project. But we have here Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And if you recall, he was charged with crimes, but in the final order, remember, it says Guatemala. This is the conclusion. There have not been changed circumstances in Guatemala that would make it safe, okay? That would result in his life not being threatened. If he goes there, he will be threatened. So he can't go back there because it hasn't changed. And so therefore, he is prohibited, the withholding is granted in subsection 2 here as it pertains to Guatemala, right? Which was always the case. And now they were responding saying, well, we applied to not have him go to El Salvador. They didn't want him to go to CCOT. Doesn't matter. The judge found in the conclusion that the only legal basis to prevent his deportation would be to prevent him from going to Guatemala. So it's pretty cut and dry. And we've been asking about this missing piece for a long time now. And now we've got some details about what happened inside the hearing. And so here's the report. Attorneys with Murray Osario, the immigration law firm that's representing Abrego Garcia in his Maryland lawsuit, the civil case, remember they sued, said, bring him back here, against Trump, admitted in a Friday hearing before Judge Paula Zenas, you remember her, they admitted they don't have access to the A file that's associated with Abrego's case. Well, that sounds important. The A file contains the filing made on behalf of Abrego using the official government form for seeking asylum, the Form I-589, the withholding of removal document, and relief under the United Nations, right? So here's the document and the filing instructions on how this works. We're going to begin collecting fees, they say, and there's an instructions tool. Here are the forms. Here is what one of them looks like, which we've looked at before previously. Okay, and so they may come in here on this form and they may say, I can't go back to El Salvador, right? They can fill all this out. This is like, hey, judge, look at my case. Fill this out, information about you. Don't send me to El Salvador. Don't send me to anywhere, you know, my pupusas are under attack down there, my mama and all the things. Total nonsense, but he fills it out. Now, he might have written in there, I don't want to go to El Salvador, but the judge just, it's not a preference. The judge, well, pick a country and I'll just prevent you from, no. There's got to be a lawful basis as to why we can't send you there. And we could send you to El Salvador is the thesis. So the judge said to save him that we're just going to change it. Even if you're requesting El Salvador, the only place I can legally say that you cannot go is Guatemala because his family moved to Guatemala and the mom was the one who was under attack because of the pupusa business. It's all logically lined out in the court filing. So even if, right, they filled it out on there, that we don't want to go to El Salvador, it's up to the judge to make that decision. You ask for a lot of things when you go into a court, and the court says, well, some of this is yes, most of this is no, but yeah, here's the one thing you went on. And at the time, he wasn't designated under the AEA or identified as MS-13, I would say, according to Trump's new standards. And so he wasn't marked as high priority, and any withholding of removal at the time was just essentially allowing the person to stay because it was too much trouble to deport them. Now, the revelation was made by Abrego's defense attorneys in response to a question from Zenas. That's according to two people, Roger Parloff and Anna Bauer. They were both listening or attending the hearing. And here is what the judge said via Roger Parloff. Said, well, Your Honor, the judge says, well, can you speak to, you do have the A file, right? Says Judge Zenas. Kilmar's lawyer says, actually, Judge, we have something called an EARM file. Now, we don't want you to assume mistakenly that it's an A file, and we have not received anything at all since he was returned to the U.S. in June. Doesn't actually have that file. Well, I'm interested in, the judge says, in what was done in 2019 to look for a third country for him, which would have been El Salvador. He could go to El Salvador because his parents fled and they were under attack because of the pupusa business. By Kilmar's own admission. So the Kilmar's lawyer says, well, we don't think anything was done. We have a Form 790C. Government says, can we get a copy of these docs? Or somebody says, Case says that. Now, I asked the witness, the judge says, about this. He had no knowledge of work authorization. And now Roger says, I don't know if it's Cooper or Rossman. A couple people there. All right, well, I wanted to pause to give the opposing time to ask questions. Okay, the original motion, says the judge, asked for certain relief that you may be modifying or drilling down on. And you asked for two things. Don't remove him from the U.S. And she's talking about due process and whether there's a foreign country that he can be removed to. And so it will be well worth getting the transcripts. But the big takeaway is on this, they don't have the file, okay? So they don't have the final, let's say, check boxes that the judge wrote off on a checkbox kind of form document, right? To see, does it say Guatemala or El Salvador? Because the original order explains in the filing Guatemala. All right, so they say that Anna Bauer also said the same thing. Here is another post from them over on Blue Sky. Judge Zenas says, you have the alien file, right? Or the A file, which is the ICE file showing his immigration history. Like, you've got that. You're saying he was wrongfully deported, so like you have the records. Well, we have something called an file. Now, I'm not an immigration lawyer, and I don't want to say it's the same thing, says this lawyer, but we haven't received any updated file since he was returned. And says, well, we talk about work authorization and other things. So they don't have it because it doesn't exist, right? He doesn't have an order to El Salvador preventing him to going to El Salvador. If it existed, we'd have seen it. Maintained by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, an A file is the comprehensive record of an illegal alien's interactions with immigration authorities. A member of his legal team reportedly replied, we have the EARM file. Now, according to Homeland, an EARM file appears to be related to an internal electronic database used by ICE to track its detainees as their immigration court cases are processed, with illegal immigrants remaining within the system until they're deported. Now, it seems there is no overlap between the EARM file that his attorneys have, which contains information about his movements within ICE, and their client's A file, which contains the answers to the arguments that they made in 2019. Now, despite not having access to this file, his lawyers have said he was wrongfully sent to El Salvador, and I have no idea why, and we still have no idea why. Pam Bondi and the DOJ, in our take on this, have just misread the order and have just totally missed the whole thing. Or they have the A file and it says it in there, but his attorneys don't have it. The judge hasn't seen it. Though his attorneys have not seen the document, the form filed by Garcia would have contained the request for withholding, which was granted by Judge Jones, revealing which nation or nations Abrego sought to avoid. Now, within the text of the order, they say, Jones explicitly barred them from sending him to Guatemala, as we've read many times, citing the relocation of his family members who moved to Guatemala. He wrote, at present, even though the family has now shut down the pupusa business, the Barrio 18 gang is still attacking their pupusas. They continue to harass and threaten Kilmar's sisters and parents in Guatemala, where they moved. And they've also targeted the brother-in-law who also lives with the family in Guatemala. The judge also specifically wrote that there were factors in Guatemala that made it unsafe. Abrego can't go there. Therefore, the withholding was granted to Guatemala. They said he can't apply for asylum because he was in our country illegally for too long and wasn't actually here claiming asylum because he was here trafficking humans. However, he has established past persecution based on a protected ground and the presumption of a well-founded fear. Now, where is that going to happen? Guatemala. Homeland has not shown that there are changed circumstances in Guatemala that would result in his life not being threatened. Okay, you can't send him there because his life will be threatened. Therefore, his application for withholding is granted, right? And so their argument could be if on this form he said El Salvador, Guatemala, and the other things, they could say, well, the judge granted the entire request. And your argument could be, if it's even in there, right? It might just be Guatemala. I think it probably is in there. And the judge, in his argument, says, you have to have a nexus between the harm and the person making the request. And there's no nexus in El Salvador to the harm because his family's not there. His family is the mechanism by which the harm will transfer to Kilmar. And they moved. So, Tennessee Star, dropping another one. Now, Michael Patrick Leahy, the editor-in-chief, analyzed the document in a new series, saying even Alan Dershowitz had said the order didn't prohibit him to go to El Salvador. Alan Dershowitz is on board. He said the court was wrong. The court didn't read the briefs. The court didn't understand the case. It is a confusing brief, by the way. Like, we read it and just presumed. We had to read it twice before we're like, oh, this guy was not given the right to be in the country. The court had already decided he was deportable. He just wasn't deportable to Guatemala. Former U.S. DOJ attorney Iraz Ruvani was fired earlier this year after he conceded, and he was the poison pill. Like, he never should have conceded that. You never concede something like that when there's an argument going the other way. And there was an argument going the other way in the judge's own order in the concluding paragraph. So Iraz knew better. He was either unethical and poison pilled, or he was a moron and didn't actually read the order that he was supposed to prepare for and appear in court to prepare for. And the lawyer told the judge he had no justification for his client's actions. Yes, you do. It's in the concluding paragraph. But he wanted to just hit the Trump administration with a scandal from the beginning. Now, the statement by Ruvani ultimately led to the Supreme Court demanding that Obrego be returned. They ultimately brought him back. And the Tennessee was also the first outlet to report, remember, he got stopped in Tennessee, that he was stopped by Highway Patrol. The agency told the Star that troopers were ordered to release Obrego because Biden's FBI let him go. The dude was trafficking humans across Tennessee. Tennessee Patrol stops him. They're like, he's clearly trafficking humans. You can hear them talk about it on the body cam. FBI says, let him go. Because illegal aliens get premium America. They can do whatever they want here. You get consequences. You go to jail. But they can drive around on suspended, revoked licenses, working for convicted human traffickers. FBI lets them go when they've got kids stuffed in their floorboards on makeshift back seats that they attached to the back of another convicted criminal's vehicle. Obrego was returned to Tennessee, and he got indicted. He's pleaded not guilty, and now he's facing charges there. And what we saw is in this case, Kilmar just had a hearing, and we saw that that also is involving multiple cases. So remember, we just got done talking about Judge Zenas in Maryland. Now we're in Tennessee. Same individual, Kilmar, but this case is involving the criminal charges. So Zenas is now saying, well, sounds like you guys don't actually have the full file. Maybe we need to get that, see what's inside of it, because I presumed that I could take you on your word. Like, she should have asked that question 5 months ago. She didn't do that. And now we don't know what's in the file. But this is a separate case, right? Kilmar, as we just read, was brought back to the country, and he's now being prosecuted in Tennessee. And the DOJ just filed this. Remember, the lower level judge said, Kilmar's a nice guy, okay? He worked for a union. And he only had 2 orders of protection against him for beating his wife. It was only 2. So, whatever. Don't be a bigot. And said he can go free. He's not a flight risk because of reasons. And Trump has responded. The DOJ sent the following. All right, the United States is replying to Kilmar wife beaters' opposition to our motion. The government said, we want you to revoke his release conditions. For the reasons outlined in the U.S. opening brief, and by the way, Kilmar's not going to be released. He would just go, if he's left criminal custody, into homeland custody and be deported. So once the judge said, we'll release him, then Kilmar's attorneys came back and said, actually, don't release him, because it's just going to go over to Kristi Noem. Pam Bondi is just going to say, oh, it's not mine. Just throw the keys over to Kristi Noem. She's going to catch it and then take the keys and deport his booty. So then they responded and said, actually, don't do that. Keep him here. And so a lot of this is kind of going to be moot anyways. But the DOJ is making their point. Keep him in custody. You should have never granted this. Nobody else gets these benefits, right? If you're another person who's accused of crimes like this, and you're a flight risk, and you've got orders of removal and all these things, you would never get the benefit of the doubt where the judge writes 50-page screeds about how mean Trump has been to you. Never. But of course, this has been politicized like most of the judiciary thus far. Says, as further emphasized, this court should revoke this lower-level magistrate judge's release order. You denied our request for pretrial detention. Here's why. Defendant Kilmar should be detained because there is no combination of conditions that can reasonably assure the safety of the community or his appearance in future proceedings. In a finding to the contrary, this lower-level judge, in his opinion, he committed numerous factual and legal errors, and nothing in their opposition can justify his flawed analysis. Man, getting told right now. Rather, Kilmar now asks this court to adopt a wholly unprecedented legal standard that has never been applied in the bail hearing context at all, which even the judge declined to apply. Additionally, Kilmar also tries and fails to justify the judge's problematic approach to the overwhelming evidence that we presented. And remember, during the detention hearing, the government brought in a bunch of people. The defense, Kilmar's team, submitted like an affidavit from CASA, an NGO that fights for illegals, which compellingly demonstrated that the defendant should be detained. And so you, the real court, should revoke the lower level judge's release order. Now here's why. Kilmar claims that this case law is binding, but it's misleading. It's not even true. It's completely off the mark. In fact, the Sixth Circuit's interpretation of that related to a completely different statute, not anything you're even talking about. Read the case. They never extended Fields to cases involving bail reform. You guys even read anything? Look it up. Here's another citation, and other circuits have also done the same thing, and you guys are dumb. Not a single court in this country, not even Judge Holmes in her release order, has adopted the elements of Fields for its analysis, or what the term involves means. Ridiculous. Meanwhile, courts across the country have routinely applied the persuasive analysis in another case, and to our knowledge, not a single court has ever declined to follow the Watkins case until this judge in this case. Till this judge decided, well, I'm going to just be the president now and disavow any prior precedent and just do whatever I want. Now, to accept Kilmar's interpretation of the law, that would lead to wildly inconsistent and absurd results, including different meanings of the term involved based on different jurisdictions. As this case rightly points out, Watkins, if Congress wanted courts to apply an elements-based approach to this law, they would have done that. They could have written it into the law. They didn't. And if the court were to accept Kilmar's invitation, it would hamstring the court's ability to detain violent criminals because the standard would be so high. It would mean the government couldn't even seek detention for a violent shooter, merely because the elements don't necessarily involve a firearm, it being in possession of ammunition. Or even more relevant, it would mean that a defendant who deliberately victimizes a minor, for example, by intentionally defrauding a child, could argue that the crime did not involve a minor because the statutory offense does not require the victim to be a child. So it's actually not a minor crime because I could have done it to somebody else who's not a minor. This is irrational. It would make no sense. And we would have to release basically everybody. And so the court should reject this nonsensical and dangerous request to rewrite the rules from the lower level judge. And more fundamentally, Kilmar's opposition fails to justify the speculative findings about the government's evidence, which was very sound. Kilmar says the court in a bail proceeding need not credit evidence that is unreliable. But that is not the factual record before it, and that was put before the magistrate judge here. Rather, our proof was overwhelming. It was corroborated, and it was otherwise uncontradicted by anything that you guys presented. For example, the lower level judge found that the government failed to prove by a preponderance of the evidence, which is a very low standard, like 51%, more likely than not, just a preponderance. You win. Government didn't prove it, despite testimony, documents, body cams, all sorts of video, everything there said, not there, that human smuggling crimes charged involve any minor victims. And right, the minors, we saw multiple testimony about even there may have been somebody in the car that night who was like 15 or something. But as the government pointed out in its opening brief, there was a wealth of evidence demonstrating Kilmar's years-long smuggling operation involving minor victims. Testimony from multiple cooperating witnesses directly participated in the human smuggling operation And they discussed minor victims being transported there. Van Hollen loves it. Shifty loves it. Specific testimony from cooperating witnesses about how the defendant acted sexually inappropriate towards female minor victims. Little Jeffrey Epstein happening over there. Jeffrey Epsteinoza says, Kilmar, Abrego, Epsteinoza. Yeah. The defendant used his own children as cover during the trips, exploiting minors for that. And testimony from another person called NV told the government that Kilmar solicited nudies from a 15-year-old girl and solicited her to participate in the alien smuggling scheme. Testimony and physical evidence from a traffic stop also demonstrated that a 15-year-old was being smuggled during that trip. Now, based on this evidence, we should have, at minimum, been granted the right to a detention hearing, but the judge said, well, actually, he says he didn't do any of that. He disagrees with all of your evidence, and so I believe him, said the judge. Says, like the judge's opinions, Kilmar attempts to downplay the most powerful evidence against him. Multiple accomplice witnesses who will testify about participating in this scheme for years. But as the court is well aware, testimony from accomplice witnesses can be highly probative given their ability to tell the jury about their firsthand knowledge of the participation. And for this reason, the Sixth Circuit has repeatedly held that the uncorroborated testimony of an accomplice may support conviction under federal law. Months in advance of a trial, this judge had no reason at all to discredit the testimony from cooperating witnesses that Kilmar was abusing minors, particularly given the testimony on the point from numerous respects, and there was no evidence at all whatsoever presented to the contrary. The judge's opinion essentially faulted the government for failing to call cooperating witnesses to testify at a hearing, and the hearing was merely just to be granted the right to seek a detention hearing, right? So it's not that they didn't bring them to the detention hearing. They just said, we need to get to the showing that we deserve a detention hearing, and it's such a low standard, it's basically, by default if you have a case like this. Now, finally, in addition, says Pam Bondi's DOJ, in addition to being consistent with the evidence introduced at the hearing, it's also consistent with common sense that minor victims, including unaccompanied minors, were smuggled as part of his sprawling human operation. The indictment alleges that the charged human smuggling operation began in or around 2016 and continued for a decade. Wild. And that guy, I think he was making like 100 G's a year. So he might have made $1 million or so coming off of human smuggling over his little time frame here. During the time frame, the human smuggling operation smuggled thousands of undocumented aliens for profit. The judge's opinion implies that not a single minor victim was ever smuggled, not for nearly a decade, not a single victim, despite the hundreds of thousands of unaccompanied minors that had been encountered at the southwest border during that same time frame. And so it's a matter of probability. And we're talking about preponderance of the evidence. On its face, that proposition is facially incredible. And so simply put, the judge's factual findings were completely inconsistent with the weight of the evidence under the preponderance standard. And the judge's findings about the danger also suffered the same flaws. Kilmar is a menace to society. The government presented evidence at the detention hearing relating to his possession of guns during the smuggling conspiracy, his sexual advances towards minors, his solicitation of CP from a 15-year-old girl, his disturbing history of domestic violence and abuse of his wife and kids, obstruction-related conduct during the course of the conspiracy, false statements and lies to law enforcement, membership in an MS-13 gang, a violent and dangerous transnational criminal enterprise, and more. Based on the full and complete record, the court cannot be reasonably assured that he's going to refrain from committing additional crimes. Like, if this were anybody else, okay, your son or daughter, God forbid, they're falsely accused by some lunatic in college of bad things, and you see what a judge does if your person has all of this stuff going on. You think they let them out of custody? No, not at all. Says, but he's an illegal, so he gets premium version of America. He gets an extra presumption of innocence because he's better than us, according to our leaders. Says, and otherwise appear for all court proceedings in this case, given the potential penalties and the likelihood of deportation. Now, in suggesting that the court can rule otherwise, they attempt to explain or downplay the impact of each of this bit of evidence. But the record here, when you view it in its totality, compellingly shows this guy should be detained. As the government intends to once again show during the hearing, the evidence shows he cannot be released safely. Signed by Trump's DOJ, Robert Maguire, Jacob Warren, Christopher Eason, and Jeremy Franker, over with Task Force Vulcan. Man, that sounds cool. I want to start a task force. Maybe call it Klingon. Anyways, we've got that. Now, they're also filing a bunch of stuff under seal that we can't see in this case. You can see this also got submitted in Tennessee. Motion for leave to file documents under seal. So, U.S. DOJ saying, we got a bunch of stuff we want to send to you, Judge, and we're not going to see it in public. So, we'll see what comes out. Tom Homan, who has been on this for quite some time, says, we are actually looking for the missing children. Remember, the Democrats didn't care too much about that. When 300,000 that they admit missing kids, gone. Tom Homan says, we're going to get to the bottom of it because this is America and we can't have it happen.
Unbelievable that the Democrats are not on board. When you look at this raid, there were 10 juveniles that were illegally brought across the border. You and I covered this under the Biden administration. I was down in Texas. We encountered 8, 10-year-old, 12-year-olds coming across with just a name and an address and a phone number on their necks, the cartel ruthlessly sending them across. And yet now we know that 10 of them, 8 of which were unaccompanied minors working illegally in a marijuana farm, and your agents go in and rescue them essentially, and yet there is violent resistance to that. Does that upset you?
It certainly upsets me, and like I said, you know, the work men and women of ICE are doing is incredible. Look, we're looking for over 300,000 missing children. We've already found 10,000. Have you heard that anywhere? No, the media is simply not covering it. And look, this should be a nonpartisan issue. Arresting public safety threats and national security threats, everybody be all on the same page on that. Rescuing children, I mean, it should be a nonpartisan issue. Everybody should be in lockstep on that, but they're not. The media is lying. The Democrats they don't want President Trump to be successful. I got news for them. We are being successful.
That's right.
Every illegal alien public safety threat we arrest makes this country safer. Every national security threat we take off the street and deport makes us safer. And we're rescuing thousands of children. The lives saved every day by ICE, the lives saved every day by Border Patrol, are in the hundreds. So it's the only thing I can think of, Griff, if they hate President Trump more than they love their community. They hate President Trump more than
100%.
they want, safe communities. And there's just no other excuse why this is not, why this has become a partisan issue to take public safety threats off the street.
Yeah, they'd rather see their team lose than the one player on the team that they hate score the winning goal or the winning touchdown, right? They'd rather lose, the whole team lose, because they're just miserable people. And so even when something good is happening, like we have a control of our border again, and we're not being flooded by foreigners, they hate it. They want to be flooded by foreigners because they don't like Americans or America. And if you water it down into meaninglessness, then they can rebuild it in their own image and likeness because they think that they're God. And we know they're not. So we're going to keep covering this. Kilmar's attorneys now admitting we don't even have the file. And we'll be looking into this one continuously. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, we got one more update on the day. And this one is from one of our favorites, Chuck Grassley. Here's what he says. The Secret Service knew about a threat on Trump and they didn't do anything to prep for the Butler rally. Chuck Grassley, the great senator from Iowa, dropped this new report saying, I'm releasing this showing the Secret Service knew of a threat to President Trump's life 10 days, says Chuck, before Butler, and they didn't share info with staff on the ground so that they were unprepared. A report that we'll take a look at identifies Secret Service problems and recommends fixes. This info never would have been made public without congressional oversight. Man, and Chuck really knows how to squeeze a bunch of words into one tweet. There's no character count limit any there anymore, but we appreciate it. We like conciseness. So he published this. Now, this was a major report. It's about 98 pages. We got the full thing pulled up here. We won't go through it all, but you can grab it over at grassley.senate.gov. and we'll hit the highlights on the summation of it. But let me show you what else is inside. Okay, it's very, very big, and it has a lot of stuff inside, right? And when you scroll all the way down through it, through about 100 pages, you'll see we've got graphics, we've got reports, we've got recommendations, org charts, what is the Secret Service role, who was actually doing what and when, different agencies that were there, Secret Service, DOD, Homeland, all the local cops, external entities, all these people, all failed. Trump got shot in the head. And so lots of reasons as to why this went bad. Okay, several of them, heavy use of external partners and siloed communication among Secret Service, state, and local law enforcement. Nobody was talking to each other. And the Secret Service has taken a bunch of steps to work on this. They chronicled and recorded a bunch of text messages and photographs here at the very end of the report. Apologies for all the scrolling, but you can see we got a full timeline on this thing. And I'm sharing this with you just to show this looks like it's probably one of the most comprehensive reports that we've seen out of Congress thus far. And we're happy to see that because we were supposed to have this like bipartisan committee that was going to investigate, get to the bottom of all this. Then we learned the FBI burned the dude's body the same day they formed the committee. So what kind of investigation could they do? Really, not much. But here is the summation of this. And they say, this is what we found. The U.S. Secret Service failed to implement security measures that could have prevented the assassination attempt in Butler. Now, at the time, former president was not yet the official Republican nominee. Now, this presented a unique challenge because they didn't know what to do. They're like, well, it's just Trump. He's former president, and he's not maybe going to win, and so we don't really need to give him proper security. This presented a unique challenge. What should we provide? The failure was also caused in part by a lack of specific and complete guidance outlining roles and responsibilities. For example, Secret Service guidance at the time did not include details outlining a list of key steps the site agent should take to properly staff the security room. Even though the Secret Service provides a checklist, like these, like paint by numbers type of thing for these people, it's like a value menu. Just go up there and just do number one, okay? Since the rally, and they're like, what? Sloped roofs? That's dangerous. The Secret Service has taken steps to revise its policies, like balance lessons, and many of the policies still lack needed details. Now, prior to July 13th, senior level Secret Service officials became aware of a threat to President Trump. This information was not specific to the rally or the gunman, but nonetheless, the Secret Service siloed practice for sharing this threat information is central to developing site security plans for the rally. And they were unaware of the threat, right? So it should have been communicated regardless. And if it would have been communicated, maybe they would have had more resources there and prevented crooks. According to Secret Service officials, this information was not more broadly shared across the Secret Service because, in part, the information was highly classified. Maybe it was being conducted by John Brennan, and the intelligence community did not include information at a lower classification level to share. However, the Secret Service's siloed information sharing practices, like requesting that only personnel with an individual's chain of command be briefed on the threat, it also contributed to members of Trump's advance team not receiving any information either. Now, making changes to these policies to the Secret Service should require it to proactively share threat information with everybody. It's always that, our government just has like a real difficult time communicating. Like same thing with 9/11, No, nobody was talking to each other. So I know what we need, the Patriot Act. Further, sharing threat and risk information could also help ensure resource decisions are based on risks, and they don't know how to allocate resources, and that's all it is. Yeah, it's all just let it happen. Should we communicate that? No, we can't. It's classified. All right, well, someone's going to shoot Trump in the head. Well, it's classified, so we can't send that to the Secret Service. Do you think they should know about it? Well, I mean, yeah, but I don't want to go to jail for sharing classified documents. It's true, neither do I. All right, well, I guess we'll just keep it in the Manila file folder, huh? Yeah, that sounds good. If anybody needs it, we'll know where it is. Says the Secret Service was made aware in July 2024 of a threat from the intelligence community. Senior executives did not request that anybody in the field get that information because they're like, oh, well, maybe he'll get shot in the head. What can we do? Secret Service held a briefing on classified information for Trump's senior division officials, but not for others who were actually responsible for securing the site. So July 3rd, then we got July 8th. And then on the 9th, an official in the Trump Protective Division shared general threat information with the lead advance agent. However, other members of the advance team did not receive the information because a bunch of people wanted him shot in the head. So we've got that. Now we got similarly out with Chuck Grassley. We've got a full report. You can read the full thing over there via Chuck Grassley's website. But he's also saying he's supporting Pam Bondi still as this inquiry marches forward. Chuck Grassley on the Senate Judiciary Committee says he has not lost confidence in Attorney General Pam Bondi. And I saw Matt Gaetz. A lot of people floated him as a replacement for Pam Bondi on a clip singing her praises from the rooftop. And Chuck Grassley's got her back too, but he does want more information around the agency's case about Epstein. He says, I wish I knew what she knew, and I'm going to have probably to get some more information, said Grassley, but it's not going to stop Bondi from doing the good work that she and the FBI is doing. Grassley's comments coming after many people unhappy about this saga. I saw Laura Trump on Benny's show saying that more would be coming out. I've got my doubts about that, but we'll see. Many in the president's base unhappy about it. But Johnson says, listen, man, Trump is doing a remarkable job. He got shot in the head and nearly got shot a second time a couple weeks later. And now he's got one purpose in mind, which is to save America.
No political leader in American history who has endured so many relentless attacks, even attacks upon his life, and remains so strong and resilient. And it's very clear, I mean, on two occasions, failed assassination attempts, his life miraculously spared on the world stage where everyone can see it. The president called me early this morning and we reflected upon this, about a half-hour conversation. We talked about the moment I was with him right after the second assassination attempt, just 64 days after the Butler, Pennsylvania tragedy, where they caught the gunman with the muzzle pointed out of the bushes on the golf course in Florida. And I sat with him, my wife Kelly and I sat with him for 2 hours and 45 minutes right after that event while they were trying to clear the security perimeter around Mar-a-Lago. And we just talked about this, how clearly God had saved his life, spared his life for a purpose. And he acknowledges that. He talks about it openly now. And he understands the weight of history upon him, the legacy that he will leave and the responsibility that he's been given to help save the country. And it's a very serious thing and a profound thing to be a part of.
Yeah, and hopefully there is accountability for the failures on that day. And Congress has a role to play in that. Chuck Grassley is looking into it and also looking into other files. And so we'll see what comes of it, if anything. But the report is now available. Chuck Grassley saying the Secret Service was more corrupt than, or more deficient, or more incompetent, or more whatever adjective you want to use than we even knew. They had open, active threats. They had meetings about it, but they just didn't tell anybody about it because not that important. If Trump gets shot in the head, obviously, we're glad that didn't happen, but we want to make sure that the people responsible for those failures are held accountable, and it never happens again. All right, my beautiful friends, what a great stream it has been. If you're just joining us, we started the day talking about Fauci and a criminal referral from Rand Paul going from the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee over to Pam Bondi, saying, hey, Pam, remember Fauci? You can prosecute him now. And you should do that for violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 1001, lying to the U.S. government. We'll see if that happens. Pam Bondi, hopefully, is properly motivated to do something, good out there. And we'll see what she comes back with. Now, we read through Fauci's pardon, got some clips from Ron Johnson hearing from the vaccine injured. Rand Paul was up here today. And then we turned our attention over to Kilmar because there was a courtroom bombshell last week where we got testimony from Kilmar's attorneys that they don't even have his file that would properly validate their claims that he was illegally removed to El Salvador. And so why may they have been violating their duty of candor to the courts? Maybe there should be repercussions for that. But we went through the form. We talked about the testimony saw what was happening here in the case, and the Bondi DOJ from Trump also have responded to his request to have his release conditions allow him to get out of custody. So we're battling over that. And of course, we'll keep our eye on it. Tom Homan working to go get those 300 missing kids that Biden imported and trafficked into our country. We also then wrapped it up with Chuck Grassley dropping another report, making it publicly available, and detailing what actually went down in Butler. They knew 10 days before that there was an open threat. That threat was not communicated down the chain of command. Had it been, there probably would have been more resources that were transmitted over, but the headquarters, CIA, FBI, Christopher Wray, and the rest of them just kind of sat on it, let it go through, because what is the big deal if they take Trump out? They'd all be celebrating and doing cartwheels about it. So we talked about that, and now, my friends, it is time to hear from you, and we're grateful that you're here. Thank you for being here. Thanks for subscribing to our channel if you haven't done so already. We go live 5 days a week here, same time, and we'd love to have you back. Now, let's hear from you. I see some great donos coming in. Thank you for supporting our work here. Thanks for being here. Thanks for bringing in new membos. And thank you to Donut and K-Bean clipping for us on the day. And Carrie B this morning. Here's what we got. It's Taco Tuesday, except it's not a taco. See, that taco is very unhappy about it. It is over for Taco Tuesday. Not happening today. It's now T-Bone Tuesday, Tomahawk Tuesday, Tri-Tip Tuesday, and Tater Tot Tuesday. Because we're not eating tacos or pupusas anymore. Jesser Bob says, Rob, last night's show is still showing. It's being processed. Is there any way to release the episode? So I think it's going to be a locals problem. And I saw in the comments, somebody else said Viva's show was also delayed. So Jesser Bob, in the meantime, until locals processes it, I would encourage you to watch it just on Rumble. Check it out over there if you're opposed to YouTube. And hopefully it processes soon, but I don't have any real control over it. But I'm sorry that you're experiencing that. It's annoying, I know. Susanna, what's up? Bill Gates got USDA-approved foods to be sprayed with a peel to prolong shelf life, and Michelle Pfeiffer is going to expose this. So the deep state says no organic for us. Produce will now have a film that you can't see and cannot be washed off. Organic foods, according to Michelle Pfeiffer. Wow. From Susanna. Yeah, Bill Gates trying to poison us all? Sounds about right. SD Goldstar Mom, what's up? Minnesota shooter letter is out. Howdy from SD Goldstar Mom. Great to see you, SD Goldstar Mom. That was the guy in who was like Tim Wall's associate kind of thing. Yeah, give me more. Give me more. He's here. Thank you, More Here, for bringing in 10 more here. What's up, Eric Bates, Marco Kungla, Snowman here, Bruce Cahote, Tiffany Sayri, we got Riven Hex, Farley the Barber, Democracy Manifest, Hugh, last name, Jasshole, Renee Gamache, all gifted membos, courtesy of More Here, bringing in 10 more here. Thanks for doing that. More Here. What's up? Chubby Stubby says, I'm sure the judge will overlook the ACLU lawyer's deceit and continue to carry their water. Or she might try to deflect from their blatant lie to the court and find some typo or something to reprimand the DOJ lawyers instead. Well, maybe if you would have given them the file, then they would know. Well, why'd they make the claim if they don't know that? Why'd they say he cannot go to El Salvador when there's a good argument that he could? Because they're dishonest. And they shopped her for him because they knew she would bite into it. Not even look critically at the case. Just take their word for it. And the Trump DOJ botched it, right? They had Iraz Ruvani, then nobody came in and read it right and just kind of took it over. Uncle Charlie, what's up? RLTW. Hey, thanks, Robert, for breaking things down for us. Thank you, Uncle Charlie. Thank you, my man, for being a member. Thanks for supporting our work. Couldn't do it without you. And you're being here for 7 months, man. That's awesome. Uncle Charlie, you're the man. Thank you. Hey, Kim Mbornani. What's up, Kim? Thank you, Kim, for becoming a member. Grab the morning stream from this morning, and we're going to have a members-only after party today, so members, stick around. We'll debrief for a little bit, see what's up. Hey, Bill Dozer, what's up, y'all? I do believe I finally hit 1,000 followers on Rumble. That's awesome. So, my friends, if you're a Rumbler, check out Bill Dozer's channel. It's growing like mad, man, like a weed over there. Says, thank you so much to those who have given my little show a chance, and thanks to streamers like Rob for being a great example. Man, thank you, Bill Dozer, for being here with us, my man. I'm really glad to hear about that and that success. And that's a big number. That's a big one. Yeah, that's a big one. I remember that one. Like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. It is. It's crazy. It's really awesome. So Bill Dozer, super cool, man. I'm glad that it's working for you. Check out Bill Dozer stuff. Good dude, good content. And we love him. Hey, I'm an American man. Sun's out, buns out, baby. What kind of buns are we talking about? And whose buns? That's a good question. I'm an American man. Like, are they your buns or what? I don't know. All right, what's up? Elf is here. 10 new membos coming in. The virtual glue effect. Oh, that sounds interesting. Jacob St. Amour. What's up, Ben? Last name Dover. Angel is here. Chastity Rachel. Welcome. Shao Kahn TV. And Jason H. and Kitties Never Die and Elizabeth Sanford. All gifted membos courtesy of Elf. Bringing in new friends. Thank you all for doing that. And Uncle Bozy is here. If Fauci is investigated and charged, could Biden's doctor be subpoenaed, given immunity, and forced to testify before a grand jury and or trial? Yeah, I mean, I think that's being contemplated right now to see if they could force him to testify in front of Congress. Now, I think what the rub on that is he also invoked client-patient confidentiality. But yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, you grant him immunity. Testimonial immunity. I still don't know if he would be cooperative, but I think his other defense is not like he's fearful of criminal prosecution. So the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, you're not going to incriminate yourself. So if he's not going to be facing criminal charges, is there anything else that you can waive that would get him to open up his testimony? And I think he would invoke doctor-patient privilege as well. So he would say, well, that I can't invoke. So it's going to get, hard to get him to comply, but maybe there's criminality there, right? Maybe you start investigating and prosecuting him, and suddenly he wants to talk because he doesn't want to face criminal prosecution for fraud. Christina Butler, or abuse of office or whatever, right? Like, if there's some criminal liability there. Christina Butler, what's up, Christina? Thank you for the dono. Very nice of you. No comment on it, but thank you, Christina Butler. Princess 70 in the house today. Doan. How is prosecuting Fauci not a slam dunk? Yeah. For Pam, you mean? Yeah, I would agree. It's like, man, I know you're upset about Epstein, but we're going to give you a Fauci. How do you feel now? And we're going to throw in James Comey in there too. How about now? Okay, that's pretty good. I know you're still mad at me, but I bought you and brought you home another set of flowers. This one's called John Brennan. Well, these are beautiful. Thank you. Jeffrey Adams. Rand, DOJ, please indict Fauci. I didn't vote for your big, beautiful bill. Trump says, go after yourself. Like, what? Yeah, Trump. What if Trump comes out and says, Pam, no, we're not. Fauci's great. Because Trump's pretty in favor of the jab. I Love Broccoli says, if Bondi doesn't resign after lying to our faces, this administration has no credibility. Well, I think, yeah, I mean, there's some truth to this statement, but I think Pam is just following Trump's orders. Truthfully, I think that Pam and Cash and Dan probably had information, and they were probably going to disclose it, and they were probably being truthful when she's like, we're processing it, the DOJ's investigating it, all the files, all the things. And then at some point, they all got cut off. And Pam probably got the order, which triggered Bongino. And then Bongino's hearing, oh, it's actually not Bondi. So it's not Bongino versus Bondi. It would be Bongino versus Trump. And so Bongino is now having to ask himself, is Trump making a judgment call? And do I defer based on that? And it turns out, I think Bongino was at work today again. He was yesterday. So if you fire Bondi or she resigns, that would be because she did something that was out of alignment with the administration, but she didn't. Trump defended her completely and said she's doing a great job. So how can she resign? Now, you might still say that the implications of her not resigning are that the administration has no credibility, and I think that there would be people who would agree with you on that. But I think, these are, it's politics. You kind of have to bifurcate these things as separate issues. And as I said, like, what happens if you come back and you get a Fauci, you get a Brennan, you get a Comey, and it was just a judgment call from Trump based on whatever. is that redeeming? Is it like Dumb and Dumber? You know, you totally redeemed yourself when I think they stole that kid's scooter or something. Sharpie guy, what's up? Rob, to your question about Kilmar, and do you think you would get this much? I had a friend in high school who got into serious legal trouble, and he was shipped around the different facilities by the feds via a bus, plane, etc. And he referred to it as diesel therapy. Gosh, I hope Kilmar gets that too. In later years, my school friend stated it was almost torture and helped him to become a citizen amongst us. Man, shout out to your friend. Yeah, the criminal justice system is extremely abusive. Like, more so, I think, than it should be in many ways. Because a lot of the criminality is just normal people. Like, a bulk of criminal charges are like, you know, old town crimes, urinating in public, simple assault, stupid domestic violence cases. Like, stupid cases. Somebody broke a dish that's their dish in their own trash can. A neighbor calls the cops show up, arrest everybody. What? You get, you know, DUIs, and I don't condone drinking and driving, but cops like just make money off those, and they target people at bars, and they, you know, anyways, not that I condone it, but it's a whole mechanism, right? And then you're an illegal, and you get all the benefits. Like, even if you're innocent, like I've represented people who are 100% innocent of a DUI, still had their car impounded, still had a search warrant, still had to get their license suspended, still had their blood drawn, all the things. Totally innocent. No apologies, nothing like that, right? Why should innocent citizens not have any recourse against wrong cops who are abusing their bodies when they're totally innocent? Like, where was his presumption of innocence on this one guy I'm thinking of? It like really wrecked him. He was shot. I mean, he like wrecked he was like almost traumatized by it because he was absolutely 100% innocent and the cops abused him. And it's like, Kilmar, he gets all of the benefits, right? All of these benefits, and he gets senators going down to cavort with him. It's ridiculous. It's a humiliation ritual, by the way. Anybody who's had any interfacing with criminal law knows what a joke this is. Prosecutors do too. This old guy says Kilmar would be a definite flight risk if he was released by the magistrate judge. Flights back to El Salvador. Yeah. There was a big risk that Kristi Noem's going to fly him back to CCOT. Bucky's is Rome says, Trump is going to use the Treasury to start garnishing wages in people who were ordered removed. Fines start at $1.8 million. Homeland imposing huge fines on illegal aliens. Good. Yeah, good. Maybe that'll be a good incentive. I mean, what else can we do? Hey, King of Biltong, grab your Biltong. It's at biltongusa.com, and you could use code Robert to save 10% off over there. Thank you, King of Biltong, for the dono. Air-dried, bold, and savory. BiltongUSA.com. Hey, Uncle Bozy, Fauci, Comey, Brennan, then Milley, Schiff, and others. Once the indictments start, the whole crowd will start turning on each other and trying to cut deals. I bet it gets intense. A ton of content might be coming your way. Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah. We get all those people with indictments. We might just be streaming 24/7, you know. Like one of those TV shows with indictments just coming out of our ears. We got a new one, my friends. This one's coming in. Milley's chief of staff got indicted. Perfect. Hey, Rob, can the doctor plead the fifth if his statements about Biden being healthy and the cancer he has now that should have been identified right after Trump won? Yeah, so he was really like invoking two things. One was his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, which you could say, well, grant him testimonial immunity and make him testify and just immunize him against any prosecution, and then, you know, argue that his Fifth Amendment doesn't apply and he can testify. But he also invoked, and this is what they do, right? You know, smart lawyering. Cops do this too. Like when they pull you over, they don't pull you over generally for one reason. If they want to give you a DUI, they find a couple reasons. You're falling too close, and an unsafe lane change, and a wide right turn, and stopping in the crosswalk, and a DUI. So when a defense attorney says, nah, he wasn't speeding, or actually it was a perfect turn, or he didn't stop in the crosswalk, you lied. He still has one other option. You defeat 3 of the 4, still has justification to pull you over. Judge says, well, yeah, he may have been lying about those other things, but he had a reasonable suspicion on this one. All right. And so, you know, it's kind of a gimmick, but he did the same thing. He invoked doctor-patient confidentiality and this privilege that says you don't have to talk about that stuff, not because he's worried about incriminating himself, but because Joe Biden actually holds the privilege as the patient in the relationship. And so how do you waive that if the holder of that protection and that privilege is Joe Biden and not the doctor, which is why they use that one, which was pretty smart. All right, so My friends, what a beautiful day. Thank you so much for sending those in and supporting us with your donos. Welcome to new members. New members, we're going to have a members only after party right now. So if you're on YouTube, head on back to the main homepage on our channel, and we'll hit the members only after party. You'll see it pop up if you're a member, and I'll also drop the link in the chat. Come join us. Locals, friends, hang tight, and we'll see you back on the very same stream. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Okay, so Zutral says, hey, everyone, don't forget to head over and connect to Twitch. Just think, if you have an Amazon Prime account, if you're not on, if you can't be a member because you don't want to join on Locals or you don't want to join on YouTube, consider following us and watching over on Twitch, because then once I reach a certain threshold, then I can activate a members only component, I do believe, and then we could do our Membo streams over there as well. So trying to figure that out, but we need a certain number of viewers, and we don't really have many of them. Hey, Idiot HQ's over there today. What's up, Idiot HQ? Thanks for being in our Twitch chat. Good to see you there. Zutral, thanks for the reminder, my man. And I should be plugging that more to our friends on Twitch. We're grateful to see you over there. We also had Miss Skeeter today. Says, here's the key point, right? Elites and people in power and so-called public servants who have hurt or facilitated hurting children must be dethroned and prosecuted. It's bigger than Trump. He won't be in office forever. Then we'll be left with these crooks leading our country. Even God will judge. Yeah, it's a big one. It is a big one. And it's kind of a foundational question. So I think it's a judgment call. And so Trump might have a disagreement about this. Are there people who have hurt or facilitated that? Is there enough evidence? Like, what is the judgment call? I don't know. But he's the president, and he made it. Thank you for the comment, Miss Skeeter. We got Darby Shaw. The moment they said stay indoors and out of the sunlight, we knew it was a sham. UV light, direct sunlight kills viruses in seconds. They knew it. I literally laughed out loud when they said no. One of the symptoms was no symptoms at all. They said, that sounds about right. You might have COVID if you don't feel anything, because you should be fearing intense panic and fear right now. Darby, what's up? The first time CNN had live coverage of a Trump rally was Butler. Is that right? Think they knew something? A lot of questions about the photographer and how they captured that bullet and all the things. Doan, hey, the third Kerry Lake trial in Maricopa is in session? For real? How did I miss that? Third Kerry Lake trial? My goodness, I had no idea. Thank you, Doan. Man, learning a lot. Hey, is it Porterhouse Tuesday? Well, yeah, it doesn't have the same rhyme or alliteration, but I'm still going to eat it. It is good. We'll make an exception today. Porterhouse Tuesday, because that thing looks good, man. Size of that puppy. Enjoy it, Chubby. It's going to be delicious. It looks great. First Amendment. Hey, Rob, is there a chance we'd be able to talk to Gold Star Mom into sharing a full-size photo of her son? Well, the request has been made officially. Gold Star Mom, request coming your direction via First Amendment. Full-size photo of your boy. If you got one, and if you're interested in sharing, feel no pressure at all. Just a friendly request, probably to honor and remember your boy, which we all could appreciate, no doubt about it. So thank you, First Amendment. Shout out to SD Gold Star Mom for being you. And my friends, thanks for being here. What a beautiful stream it has been. Happy Tuesday. Tri-tip, tomahawk, tater tot Tuesday. I hope you're enjoying it and you have yourselves a beautiful night. Now we're going to pause here for the evening. Before we wrap it up and go over to our members only after party, big thanks to our mods and meme smiths. Shout outs to Donut for clipping for us this afternoon. Donut, thank you very much. Amazing. Carrie B, KB in this morning. Our friend John's around. We've got this post today. How to get a daggam hold of yourself. That was from this morning. That was a fun one. I was just scrolling and saw that one. All right, so anyways, shout out to our mods. We've got Neuro D, Janek, Dog Digger. We've got, of course, Gigum, Just Rhonda, and Elliot. And my friends, it has been a beautiful stream. So we're heading over to our members only after party. We are going to hang out and debrief for a bit and see what you have to say about the show and what else is out there today. But of course, we're coming back tomorrow and we're going to get into it again. But in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chatting line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news.